Welcome to the Sports Lounge, brought to you by the Sportsbook at Waterview Casino in Vicksburg.
Welcome into the Sports Lounge. I'm Jon Wiener. We got a new guy in here.
I'm Corey Rholdon, and coming up on the lounge, we have the NFL Draft this weekend and the NBA playoffs.
Yeah, the best round in the NBA all year, the second round of the playoffs. Those are the big national stories, big college basketball hire here in Mississippi down in Hattiesburg, and some Nick Saban talk. But in honor of our guest, Corey, our co-host this week, born on the Bayou, we're going to have a all New Orleans edition of everybody's favorite segment, Table for Two. And Corey, it's going to be hard choices to make with 3 choices and 2 seats for the all New Orleans edition.
No doubt. We're also going to have award-winning columnist Rod Walker to come on and talk about some Saints and some NBA playoffs.
Always excited to have Rod on. Does a great job with the New Orleans Advocate. A lot of New Orleans flavors, so much so even got the black and gold tie on. You can look forward to our game time. We got a really good classic coming your way, maybe a little before your time. What do you think?
I guess so. We'll see.
We'll see. I'll likely lose anyways. It's been that kind of year so far. Not losing and put your money where your mouth is. Your boy is 5-0, so stay tuned. I'm just handing out winners. But speaking of winners, NFL Draft this week. And Corey, I'm interested to get your take on it because it's a special year for the Mississippi players when you talk about DK Metcalf, A.J. Brown, Greg Little from Ole Miss, and then, of course, Mississippi State. You got Jeff Simmons, Montez Sweat, Jonathan Abram. I mean, big time guys. We'll see in terms of the projections. Everybody at one point was like they were going to go 1 through 5 in the first round, and now it seems like a lot of them sort of slide in down to the other end of the round. But when you talk about those guys that I mentioned, who has the most promising future for you in the NFL no matter where they go?
Well, I like Jonathan Abram. I really feel like he's the next coming of Landon Collins. He plays in the box. He can run fit. He's a big hitter. Sometimes he struggles in zone defense. He's a better man-to-man player, but I really like him. I feel like he's going to play a long time in the NFL. I'm not as high on DK Metcalf just because as a receiver, he can't run laterally. As a production standpoint, he's not as good. He gets injured a little bit too much for my liking.
I think those are fair points on DK Metcalf in terms of the injury history and some questions about the separation. Now, you know how it is. It only takes one team, and I expect DK to go pretty high still in the first round. But I think we're overthinking this one a little bit when you talk about who's going to have the most promising future in the NFL. He was the best player in the SEC on the defensive side of the ball all season and the best league in the country for defensive players. And I'm talking about 94, Jeff Simmons in the middle for Mississippi State. Corey, I think without the domestic assault issue from way back in the day and the ACL injury much more recently, I think Jeff Simmons is a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. I think Simmons has that kind of talent still. He's an incredible worker. I think Jeff Simmons is going to be an all-pro player in the NFL for multiple years.
So what is the most interesting storyline coming up in the NFL draft?
You know, I think it's the Raiders. Interestingly enough, like I wouldn't have gone with the Raiders first, but you saw all the news this past weekend about Jon Gruden and Mike Mayock. Just, we're out of here. Like, we're going to do it ourselves. We don't trust the scouts.
Have you ever seen that before?
No. And especially not from a team that's had 4 picks in the first 35 spots. They got 3 first-round picks. They've signed Jon Gruden over pretty much the whole franchise, so he's calling all the shots here. They pick at number 4. I think the Raiders, with kind of what they're about and also the number of picks that they have, they stand out to be as really the most interesting team in the draft.
Well, I really like Andy Isabella from UMass. Had 102 catches last season. Ran a 4.31 in the NFL Pro Combine. I really feel like he's the white Tyreek Hill. I want to see where he can go. He's not your traditional slot receiver. He's only 5'9". I feel like that a good spot for him would be the New England Patriots and also the New Orleans Saints.
It feels like Andy Isabella came like out of the womb to play slot wide receiver for the New England Patriots. We saw Isabella against Mississippi State, a really good defense loaded with SEC SEC players, and he torched them. I mean, he just burnt them up all over the field. So Isabella, he's a big-time player. When we look here in Mississippi, some big news this past weekend. USM hiring Jay Ladner. Donnie Tyndall, we know what he did with the program. He's replaced by Doc Sadler. The program was in total disarray, and Doc Sadler did what he could to kind of elevate them back to respectability, but he says enough's enough. I go into Nebraska. Southern Miss hires Jay Ladner. Corey, just your thoughts on Jay, good, bad, or indifferent hire for Southern Miss?
I feel like it was an easy hire. I feel like he coached at Jones. I feel like it was just an easy hire. He didn't make the NCAA tournament at Southeastern. I feel like there's a better hire in the Southland Conference at UNO with Mark Schlesinger. He brought a UNO team that was in total disarray, just came back from Division II into the NCAA tournament and almost went back to the NCAA tournament this year, bringing them to a championship. I just felt like it was an easy hire.
I think easy is a great word. Like we talked about, an indifferent kind of hire, but I think easy is even better because, as we said, Jay Ladner would have walked to Hattiesburg for this job. Ladner wanted it 4 or 5 years ago when he was at Jones County at the time, and they ended up hiring Doc Sadler, who had experience. And they said, well, Jay Ladner didn't have the experience that they wanted. But I'm with you, man. Ladner can coach. Like, he's a good X's and O's guy and has won everywhere he's gone. But it was an easy hire at a time when it's really difficult for Southern Miss. I think that to have any shot at making this program more than relevant and making this program a force, when you look at how little they've been to the NCAA tournament, the facilities, the lack of a recruiting base or tradition of a recruiting base around them, I thought Ladner, indifferent at best, easy is a better word. I thought maybe they should have taken a chance on Clarence Weatherspoon. I know he's a bit of a moody dude and didn't have a lot of experience, but I think Southern's in a situation where they don't have a lot to lose. And I think Ladner can offer you some stability. I think it's a little more of the same from what Doc Sadler gave them. So I'm with you. I think easy is a good word for it.
So NBA playoffs, second round's coming up. What's the most intriguing matchup?
Well, I think of the ones that we know are solidified right now. Like, I'm excited for the Eastern Conference matchups, and I think that, like, Milwaukee and Boston, the way Boston is playing, like, this is the Celtics team people feared. This is the Celtics team that they put together and said, this is a championship caliber club. But I think you have to go Golden State and Houston, don't you?
Rematch.
I mean, with what they did last year in the conference finals and Houston taking them to 7, most people would probably say Houston's got a better chance to get them out than, Portland or Denver. If, in fact, the Nuggets make it through, whoever wins that series. So I just think with the firepower on the floor and the history last year, it has to be Rockets and the Warriors.
And that brings me to my point about the player who's under the most pressure is James Harden.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to win back-to-back MVPs. I believe he's the MVP in the league this year. And his playing style really does not fit the playoffs. He likes to get a lot of foul calls. And, during the playoffs, especially in the second, in the Western Conference Finals and NBA Finals, they really stop calling those ticky-tacky foul calls that he gets. And I feel like he wants to improve himself as a player and as a repetition to show he can win. And same thing with Chris Paul, and that he and Chris Paul are under the most pressure.
It is a really good point on Harden, and also we remember, because I agree, my answer to the question, it's also Harden. The playing style that he plays with, I think when it's under a microscope can rub people the wrong way, but Harden has had a history. You remember, I guess it was a couple of years ago, the dreadful game 6 or 7
versus Spurs,
that he had against the San Antonio Spurs, and last year not being able to get the Rockets over the line once Chris Paul went out. And also Harden's just a guy that, with the scoring ability that he has, looking at maybe potentially consecutive MVP awards, I think he has the most scrutiny on him. To a lesser extent, I think Giannis Antetokounmpo is under a lot of pressure just simply because you're the MVP. It looks like for the league. He was the best player in the league this year. You're the cornerstone franchise, the cornerstone of the franchise. We'll get it out eventually here in the sports line. I need some more bourbon over there, and then we'll get loose. But, when you're the cornerstone of a franchise, you're the next face of the NBA, and you're, supposed to be the best player in the league, like a LeBron, like a Kevin Durant. I think it's time for Giannis to show that he can do it in the playoffs. So I agree with you, it's Harden, but I think it's, in the Eastern Conference, it'd be either in that series, Giannis or Kyrie Irving for Boston.
What about a coach, Brad Stevens, with with the Boston Celtics. You know, you talked about them having back-to-back #1 seeds the last 2 years, not being able to beat LeBron.
Well, Stevens did a great job last year, by the way.
He did a great job, but this year they fell off. They kind of had all the mess with Kyrie. Is Kyrie going to leave? Is he not going to leave? Are the young players on the same page? He's on a tremendous pressure too.
It is, but Brad Stevens is a good coach, and I think he has so much credibility built up in Boston, and certainly he's seemingly pushing all the buttons right now. Real quick on the coach, and then I want to move to a little golf flavor, because I think it's a great point you bring up a coach. He's about to get bounced. I think Billy Donovan and what he has not done at Oklahoma City. We talked about this in the Sports Lounge a couple weeks ago. If you asked me like which coach was under the most pressure, you talk about a guy that was given the keys to the kingdom, Corey, not once but twice. You come in with Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant. You lose Durant, and here's Paul George to play with, and Oklahoma City may not get out of the first round. I think that looking back on it, maybe you wonder what's going to happen with Billy Donovan.
Well, I think it's more on Russell Westbrook than Billy Donovan. Just the type of player he is, shooting 4 for 25, and you're celebrating. You know, he wants to beat Damian Lillard more than he wants to beat the Portland Trailblazers.
It's a good point, and Westbrook, you know, you can kind of call him a coach killer. I just know that any coach in the entire NBA, I think, is going to sign up for Russell Westbrook in their backcourt. Hey, PGA Tour golf, which is right up my alley. I'm so happy to talk some PGA Tour on the Sports Lounge. But, Corey, it's down in your parts of the world, in the Crescent City, the Zurich Classic. Like, what's good with golf in New Orleans and the PGA Tour?
Well, it's exciting time. You know, I always see these celebrities coming out, New Orleans celebrities such as Ed Reed, Chris Berman was out there today, Will Lutz, Will Lutz, the St. Kicker, you know, Sean Payton's always out there. Funny story, last year at the Zurich Classic, Sean Payton was golfing, right? And one of these,
is that the golfing
just
thing?
a golfing thing, you know,
he
was kind of getting the movements in. And so all these NOLA.com's sports writers are asking him, Sean, who are you going to draft? Who are you going to draft? And Sean goes, I'm going to trade up and get Marcus Davenport. And all these guys are sitting there tweeting it out. It's like, I think the Saints are trading with Green Bay to get Davenport days in advance. And all of a sudden, the Saints traded up.
They actually did. Well, what's funny, we're going to talk with Rod Walker here on the Sports Lounge, who's been out at the Pro-Am event at the Zurich Classic with Sean Payton himself, and is getting done talking with Sean Payton as we speak while we're doing this show. So it'll be interesting to pay attention to what Sean said after Rod talk to him, and we're going to talk with Rod soon. Real quick, in terms of the PGA Tour, I'm not sure like how much you're invested in the week to week on the tour, but it's an interesting format at the Zurich Classic. It's match play. It's not match play, excuse me. It's team play. The pros team up, and so they invite. It's a field of 160, and they divide into 80 teams of 2, and it changes the exemptions a little bit. If you win, you still get FedEx Cup points in the tour exemption, but you don't get like a master spot, for instance. But it's a unique deal. That's why they have to, you know, play with the exemptions and what you get to win a little bit. But should there be more of this on the tour, Corey?
It's a unique thing, and I think it's worked out the last 2 years. I think it's fun. So I do think they should do it more often, just for the fact that it is working, and it brings a different twist to the game of golf.
I think it's needed. I think a little bit more. You know, if you do it too much, all of a sudden it doesn't become unique. And I think the PGA Tour players are not going to want to break away from that routine. You've got the match play 1 year. You've got the team event for part of the year. So there's like 2 or 3 events. I think maybe you could get to like 4 or 5 to kind of keep that unique element. Real quick, in college football, some interesting news. Nick Saban, hip surgery. Saban says he's going to be ready to go. Now, hip surgery is a big deal for a 67-year-old. I mean, I wouldn't know. I feel like it would be a big deal for me, a 32-year-old, if all of a sudden you, like, replace my hip. But Saban at 67 years old, it just makes you think, Corey, like, how long Saban on top?
I'm never doubting Nick Saban. You know, Nick Saban, I feel like, is just going to rule the SEC forever. He's going to go out like, not saying Joe Paterno, what happened to Joe Paterno, but he's going to be 80 years old, still kicking, leading Alabama to national championships.
So 67 years old, you're saying 80. You're telling me we've got to deal with the Crimson Tide and the process and Saban for 13 more years?
He's never going to leave. You know, he's on top. He doesn't feel like
I've got 5 years, man. This coming from like a guy who pulls for State and Ole Miss. Like, I got to sign up for another decade of just ass beatings by Saban?
I'm an LSU fan.
Uh-huh. Yeah, enough
Are we
said.
ever going to beat Alabama?
Let me ask you this real quick. Any chance he retires somewhere other than Alabama?
No. I think he stays at Alabama. He has a very good thing going there. He gets the best recruits that he wants, and he has the whole state behind him.
I'll give you this on Saban. I don't think he moves to another college from Alabama, and I don't think he goes to the NFL from Alabama. I think he retires from Alabama. But Saban is a football coach. It's all he wants, and I can't imagine what he will do other than coach football. So wouldn't be surprised to see whenever that time is, Saban hanging up in Alabama, go sit in a pontoon boat for a while, and then get a call from somebody else needing a coach, and maybe, Joe Gibbs style and so many other guys, go give it one more crack. I know State and Ole Miss will be happy as soon as they can for Nick Saban to go sit in that pontoon boat instead of on the bus coming to Tuscaloosa, Starkville, and Oxford and what have you. For Saturdays. That's the start of the Sports Lounge. Good starter segment. Reminder, Rod Walker still coming up. Good to have Corey Rholdon here, born on the Bayou. And Corey, in honor of you, coming up on the other side of the break. Well, I mean, the deep dish on the NFL draft, I'm just going to cue you and Iso Joe up and just let y'all rock. Because y'all are locked in. But we've got an all New Orleans edition of Table for Two. I still haven't made up my mind on some of these. I wonder if our audience will be able to as well. So stay tuned. We're here in the Sports Lounge.
Follow us online at Bash Brothers Media and share, like, and follow the show to enter to win a one-night stay for two at Waterview.
It's great to hang out in the Sports Lounge. I'm Corey Rholdon.
And I'm Jon Wiener, and hanging out with Iso Joe, who we're about to bring in on the Iso Cam, our director, Hack and Hank, Josh the Juice on the ones and twos. And Corey, real quick, we're really glad to have you in. Big shout out to our guy, Ray Coleman, who's not able to be with us this week, and it's great to have such great people like Mackenzie Salmon be able to fill in, and now you, Corey. And real quick, just tell our audience a little bit of your story. You're just finishing up at Mississippi College. You played football for the Choctaws. Just real quick, if you can.
Well, as John said earlier, I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana. I came to Mississippi College to play football. I'm a 4-year letterman at Mississippi College. I played safety and also created the Collegiate Sports Network at Mississippi College. We have our own show called the Collegiate Sports Hot Seat. We cover the best of Mississippi College. Also interned at WDSU and Fox 8 New Orleans, covered the Saints and the Pelicans.
Yeah, we're really glad to have Corey be a part of the show, and it's always an advantage to have a guy who played the game and now transitioning over, doing a great job talking about the game with the communications department at Mississippi College, and Corey's going to be doing a lot more with us here at Bash Brothers in the weeks and months to come, so it's great to have Corey make his debut here in the Sports Lounge. Iso! Time for our deep dish with the NFL draft. And guys, I'm excited about this because you two guys, more than me, more than like anybody I know, are locked in to the NFL draft. So Iso Joe, we're here. Draft week is upon us. Draft day is upon us. What's the pivotal story? Like, we're locked in on the Saints, you're locked in on the Colts, but like, what's the pivotal story of this draft right now?
I got 3 big stories, and 2 of them are actually Mississippi guys, but we'll start off with Kyler Murray because it's hard not to talk about him right now. There's a lot of rumors flying back and forth about the Cardinals and whether or not they're actually going to take Kyler Murray with the #1 overall pick. So that opens up a whole new can of worms for this NFL draft, whether or not they'll trade back or if they'll stay there and replace Josh Rosen. So it's a very interesting story to watch moving forward. And then on top of that, now we have the rumors of Montez Sweat possibly falling out of the first round because of his heart condition. And of course, Jeffrey Simmons, the story with him. How high will he go, or will he be sliding as well down the draft boards?
Corey, what do you think about Kyler Murray? Like, can Arizona, do you think really it's the right thing to do? They just drafted a quarterback in the first round a year ago. They need help everywhere. There's some generational talents like at pass rusher with Nick Bosa. You really think they're going to double down on the quarterback position?
I wouldn't. I'm a big Josh Rosen fan. You saw with Los Angeles Rams what Sean McVay did with Jared Goff. Jared Goff struggled in his first year with the Rams. And I feel like Josh Rosen's a very good quarterback. He has a little bit of an ego problem. And I feel like with the right offensive coordinator, with the right offensive mind, he will be a good quarterback. And as you talked about, the Cardinals were horrible last year. They need a lot more than a quarterback, and I feel like they do have a very good young quarterback in the chosen Rosen.
And Joe, that's a tremendous point, I think, from Corey, because a lot of people were out on Jared Goff after year one. I mean, they were like, this guy sucks, you know, like the Bob Barker line. This guy sucks. But, Goff made a big jump. And I guess the question becomes, in some ways, like, is Murray just that generational talent that, like, no matter who you have, you can't pass up? And I'm not sure that he is.
Part of the issue right now is people are falling victim to the Patrick Mahomes story, you know, the baseball player that comes over to the NFL is fantastic, arm strength, all of that. People think that Kyler Murray can be that. So right now it's kind of the same thing with the Sean McVay effect with hiring offensive-minded coaches.
I think that's important to pay attention to.
I like what Sean Payton said with that is, if you're going to hire a coach just because he's an offensive mind, that there's all greats of defensive coaches with great minds. The best coach in the NFL right now is a defensive mind. He just won his 6th Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So my point is, I don't know if Cliff Kingsbury is Sean McVay, but he's a lot better than the coach that they had before him. And I feel like with him, Josh Rosen will be a good quarterback.
Joe, when you look at the approaches to the draft, like we've been talking about it a lot, you know, just through, our own conversations and in breaks here in the Sports Times. Like the Patriots and the Saints are very different. Like the Patriots trade down and get assets. The Saints trade up and get players. And there's the whole, best player available versus drafting a need, or like the Patriots, just collecting assets. So is there an approach that sticks out to you as the one that's right?
It's tough. I don't really think there is really a right or wrong decision here, and it simply comes down to who's left on your draft board. If you have a can't-miss prospect like Marcus Davenport that the Saints thought they had last year, he might turn into that, then you move up and you go get him. But at the same time, like, you saw what the Patriots have been able to do year after year, and on top of that, what the Colts have done now. And the Colts last year...
Corey's just giving you the 6, man. I mean, it's real.
It is. And the Colts last year, they took the Patriots route. They traded back. They ended up with 2 all-pro players, Quentin Nelson, Darius Leonard. They got Braden Smith. They turned around their entire team in a year by doing that.
Yeah.
So it's tough to say which one is the right way to do it, but both of them have their perks and, pros and cons to it.
Well, Corey, I'll say this with the Saints. I mean, we've seen that approach, sort of trading up to get that one player, that final piece. They're working in a window that they feel like is now or never with Drew Brees. And let's be honest, they've had the team to do it and come up one play short each of the last 2 years, but that's kind of the boat that you're in. And now they've got one pick in the first 4 rounds. It's like, that's how they got here.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also is the reason why they went 7-9 3 straight seasons in a row.
Yeah, you kind of live on the edge. That's what I mean.
2011, they traded back into the first round to get Mark Ingram. And then they didn't have a first-round pick in 2012, and that set them back even further.
Yeah.
And then you miss on a player in 2013.
And you had the bounty stuff affected, where all of a sudden you had limited picks.
I'm more towards the Patriot side of things, where you believe in your philosophy, you believe in your coaches, and you get as much players as possible. And you just keep trading back, keep getting draft picks, and eventually those players will develop into good players.
It's a little bit of that what I've always called Dallas Cowboys behavior, always believing like you're one player away and you actually just keep getting further and away. Now, the Saints have had some great drafts. The 06 draft changed the franchise, and the draft a couple years ago with Marshawn Lattimore and Alvin Kamara. And I mean, you got a lot of great players there. So they're aggressive, but their scouting department is also really good. Yeah, go ahead.
On to that point, too, on both of those drafts, they had a lot of picks because they traded away some players. They traded away Brandon Cooks, and they got a first-round draft pick and a third-round draft pick, which they got Ramczyk, who's a all-pro center. All-pro left tackle, and they also got Kamara in the third round.
No, they've done a good job. And like Ramczyk, you traded up and got yourself an extra pick, and people say, why are you taking an offensive lineman? But they've extended the window for Drew Brees.
And that's why you don't really choose one way or the other when you're doing this. It's because, at times it's worth getting all of the assets and rebuilding your team. But then when you feel like that window is coming to its close, you have Drew Brees, who's getting older, closing that window. Now it's time to get aggressive and start picking those can't-miss players to make sure that you end up in the Super Bowl. Unfortunately for the Saints, they fell short, but...
The Saints went to the Super Bowl in
We're not doing this every single week.
We're going to do this every single time we possibly can. The Saints went to the Super Bowl in 2009. They beat the Indianapolis Colts. And if you didn't,
I don't remember.
If you need a reminder, it's right there behind Iso Joe, who's a huge Colts fan. So, yeah, it was on a tee for us, Joe, to just kind of light you up for that. But, look, the Colts are a team. Their future's in front of them. You know, the Saints, it's like now. The Colts have kind of built for the future with a young quarterback. They've rebuilt that roster. And talk about these Mississippi guys that are maybe late first, early second round guys. It seems like Indianapolis is kind of right there in prime position.
I'm in love with a lot of these guys. You talk A.J. Brown, Jeffrey Simmons, Montez Sweat. If they're talking about Sweat falling out of the first round, forget that. I'll take him at 26 for the Colts. You know, we need help at edge. We need help on the interior of the defensive line. I'll take that chance on Jeffrey Simmons if he falls that far. So those three names right there for me are what I absolutely love and would love to see the Colts grab. As well, they have a later second-round pick, so you could even see Jonathan Abrams. We could get three Mississippi guys all in one draft, and I would be very happy with that.
I love the John Abram, Bob Sanders comparison that you made to the Colts. Now, Landon Collins was another good one, but in terms of a guy who's going to be in the box, make an impact, coming downhill for your team. Corey, if Jeff Simmons is sitting around at 24, I've seen Simmons since he was a junior in high school. He's one of the best defensive players I've ever seen. Nothing changed at Mississippi State. He dominated from day one for 3 seasons at Mississippi State. I know he's got the injury issue. If I was a GM, what happened, which was a schoolyard fight essentially when Simmons was still in high school in Macon. Was it bad? Yes. Has he moved on and should be forgiven? Absolutely. I'm going to be stunned if Jeff Simmons is sitting there at 24.
Well, I mean, you talk about maturity. You're not very mature at 16, 17 years old. And I would be stunned, too, because he's a top 10 player in this draft.
And he's done everything right since then. He was, all academic, had great GPA at Mississippi State, never got out of line, was kind of revered, really, for what he did in the community. And, injury or not, you're not getting, other than maybe Joey Bosa or Ed Oliver, who's an interesting one to pay attention to from Houston, kind of a defensive tackle. But, give me Jeff Simmons over Ed Oliver. I know as crazy as that is to say in terms of an interior guy, I think Simmons is, Oliver as a run stopper is as good as it gets. I think in terms of being able to, the Warren Sapp effect, being able to rush the passer from the inside, I don't think there's a better guy in the draft than Jeff Simmons.
He's my second best defensive lineman in the draft. I have him second on my board behind Joey Bosa. I believe Bosa's going to be an absolute stud like his brother. But if he's sitting there at 24, 26, teams have not done their scouting correctly.
Or maybe, overthinking it a little bit.
A little bit too
look,
much.
It's not it's easy for us to sit here in the lounge, you know what I mean, with Hack and Hank back there just cheering things on, to make our statements. But it's another thing when you got millions of dollars and multiple jobs and a whole franchise on the line to kind of think yourself out of a lot of things because, you think about all the consequences. Go ahead.
And don't be surprised, you see a team like Indianapolis sitting at 26. Jeffrey Simmons falls to 17, 20. The Colts have a lot of picks. You could see him move up to take somebody like that.
Yeah, you talked about, trying to make your mock draft, which we'll have coming out to finish up your Where Would They Land series. And the trades really throw a whole new wrench into things. So good deep dish on the NFL draft happening this weekend, and we're really excited about it here in the Sports Lounge. We're always excited about Table for Two. It's become everyone's game time's coming up, which is really fun. Also, Mortal Kombat coming your way. I can't even begin to go back down memory lane on that one. But right now, right here, we've got a Table for Two. And Corey, in honor of you, we did this with Mackenzie Salmon a couple weeks ago with our guest co-host. We've got an all New Orleans edition of Table for Two. So Iso Joe's going to cue it up, explain the game.
Yeah, so I give you guys 3 options. You pick 2 to keep at your table, and you throw the other one out. So we're going to start with food, and we're going shrimp, crawfish, and oysters.
I got an upset on this one. I believe crawfish is the best food out of 3, just boiled. But you can do so much more with oysters. You can shark grilled, you can have them Rockefeller, you can, fried oyster po' boy. So oysters on there, and shrimp's the best one. Because, shrimp etouffee, shrimp mulliton, boiled shrimp.
Like how, shrimp. The New Orleans accent even comes out a little more when he's talking about oysters and crawfish. I'm with you. I think shrimp and oysters, I love crawfish. And that's the whole point of the Table for Two. Everybody wants to be in here in the lounge, but we only got 2 seats. for the same reason, Corey, like practicality and function, right? It's like crawfish, like this is one of those, like at their best, who's the best? It may be crawfish, but in terms of what you can do day in, day out, like fried shrimp po' boy, you know what I mean? Boiled shrimp, you know, everything else. It feels like crawfish is a little more limited. I'm with you. I'm going to go with shrimp and oysters, although like I'm feeling some crawfish. Like right now, you ask me what I want to eat more than anything, it's crawfish as we speak. But it's going to be shrimp and oysters, looks like, for both at our table for two.
Man, I wish you guys could see Hackin' Hank when you brought up your oysters. He was doing a little happy dance right there.
Hackin' Hank is an oyster connoisseur, I will say. Like, he's one of those guys, like, when they have the raw oysters, I'm just like, you know, it's like, I know raw oysters, and he'll like, oh, let me give you the dissertation on, like, the Gulf oysters versus, like, the muscle. I don't know, you know, whatever.
All right, well, next up we got streets. So Canal Street, Bourbon Street, Magazine Street.
I'll go first on this one, and I'm actually going to keep Bourbon Street here in my table for two. And I know, Corey, like, you're, as a native New Orleans person, you're probably like, Bourbon Street is the last street I want a part of. But I'll just say this, like, Bourbon Street, like, at the end of the day, if you don't like commercialism or tourism, like, you shouldn't be anywhere near Bourbon Street. But if you like people watching and just kind of like to like see things and walk around, Bourbon is the place to be. Like, you hear a lot of people say, I'm over Bourbon Street. Like, I am for sure. But like, Canal Street's fun. Like, there's a lot of shops. It's a big street. But like, you still got to go to Bourbon and like have some fun. Magazine is great. I'm going to go with Magazine Street, and I'm going to go with Bourbon Street, man. I'm going to embrace Bourbon Street.
See, I love Magazine Street. That's one of my favorite streets in New Orleans. I'm also going to go Bourbon Street also, just for the fact that you said people watching. It's just funny to go down there and just kind of laugh at everybody, you know, doing stupid stuff.
Have you ever been one of the people being laughed at on Bourbon Street?
Yeah, a couple times.
There's no probably here, definitely with this guy. That's what I mean. It's like both sides of it, but there's always something interesting, I guess, you know, to see on Bourbon Street. It's just like you can get enough of it quickly.
No dull nights.
Yeah, no, never a dull night, never a dull moment here in table for two. What else we got, Joe?
Sounds like I'll be having to take my first trip down to New Orleans.
We got to get you down there ASAP, Iso Joe. We got a tour guide here. We'll have to get Corey Rholdon in there, right?
I know.
Gotta bring you to Lucy's.
Yeah.
We're going to take him down there when the Saints boat race the Colts there in late December.
Enough of this. We're moving on to artists. Louis Armstrong, Lil Wayne, and Dr. John.
Lil Wayne. All right, I'll go first with this one, and I have to go against my people.
This may be the toughest one on there.
Yeah,
go ahead.
It is. I have to go against my people. I love Dr. John. You know, I am Cajun/Creole, but Louis Armstrong created jazz. He's the big name. He's the GOAT. You know, there's a whole park named after him, and then Lil Wayne's a GOAT too.
Yeah, Louis not going to make it. I feel bad about it. Like, how are you going to leave Louis Armstrong out of the table for two?
You're wrong.
I'm gonna go with Wayne and Dr. John, just because like Louis Armstrong, like his contributions obviously are second to none. But in terms of like the people I would actually like to have physically at my table for two, it's like Dr. John and Wheezy. You can't go wrong with any of them. But I think just for like kind of fun and like swag, and I mean they're all unbelievable, but and part of it is I think a personal preference. Like I listen to Dr. John all the time and I have been a Wayne head forever. Louis Armstrong, wow, tough crowd. Louis Armstrong doesn't make the table for two.
You know what's funny though?
Josh the Juice does not like that at all. I caught his face.
I think Dr. John has more swag than Lil Wayne.
Oh, he does. Dr. John has more swag than just about like anybody walking. Like anybody, like
just when he's sitting there playing the piano.
He is New Orleans swag. That's what I mean. Dr. John like is New Orleans in so many ways that even like a Louis Armstrong and a Lil Wayne may not be. Dr. John kind of personifies it all.
All right, you wanted to talk some Saints? I got some Saints for you. Jackson, Deuce, Manning.
Talking about greatest Saints here, and Ricky Jackson, for those of you who might not know, the leader of the Dome Patrol, the all-time leading Saints defender in almost every defensive category. But I'm going to go with the Mississippi guys. This one's kind of a no-brainer for me, Corey. Ricky Jackson, as respected as he is, Deuce McAllister, I still think is the greatest running back in franchise history, as great as Pierre Thomas was, as good as Kamara and Ingram was, Kamara is. Reggie Bush made his contributions, but Deuce Deuce in terms of being that franchise cornerstone for so long when the Saints weren't that great. I'm going to go with Deuce, and how can you not go with Archie Manning? I mean, Ricky Jackson, as great as he was, and like Archie didn't have the teams that either Jackson or Deuce had. I mean, his teams were as bad as it possibly got in the NFL, but I'm going to go with the patron saint in Archie Manning.
So you got the holy trinity of Saints players, right? You got Drew Brees at the top.
And we like Brees isn't even, it's not even fair, because like obviously Brees is at the table.
But Brees is at the top, but the next two, Ricky Jackson, Archie Manning.
Okay.
All right, so I have to go with Jackson and Manning. I love Deuce. Deuce was a great player. I grew up with Deuce, but it's not.
Yeah, man, this was a tough one. But again, Deuce, it's like with, I go back to like the 06 playoff game against Philadelphia and like how heroic that was, and being, again, a Morton, Mississippi guy and coming from Ole Miss. Like the first Saints jersey that I had was a Deuce jersey, like the first real, I mean, it was a Ricky Williams actually one back in the day, and we missed an opportunity in Deep Dish to honor the 20th anniversary of the Ricky Williams trade in the NFL draft. Like, Ricky was a great Saint in his own right, but I'll go with, I think this is a Mississippi thing. Like, that's my bias. I'm going to go with Deuce and Archie, but yeah, Ricky Jackson gets a seat at most tables.
Let's hit best New Orleans events. We got Jazz Fest, Mardi Gras, and Sugar Bowl.
All right, I go with this one as a New Orleanian. I'm going to go Mardi Gras, obviously. It's my favorite holiday of the year. Give me it over Christmas. All right. Jazz Fest, too. I love the Sugar Bowl, but the Sugar Bowl is only good once every 4 years when the playoffs come around. After that, those games kind of get
And see, that's what I don't like about like the college football playoff and what it's done, because the Sugar Bowl is a great example of an event that was, even though it was just a bowl game, there wasn't always national championship implications. The Sugar Bowl was a cultural event in the South, and certainly the event in New Orleans. And I still have like that affinity for the Sugar Bowl and Jazz Fest. I'm gonna leave Mardi Gras actually out of this. And I know, is that sacrilege? But like I don't, I'm gonna go with Jazz Fest and the Sugar Bowl. Like, I love Mardi Gras, but my Mardi Gras trips just always seem to end with like me just stumbling around lost on the streets. And like, at least Jazz Fest, you're gonna see some great music. Sugar Bowl, you're gonna see a great game. Like, Mardi Gras, I don't know what's going on half the time, man. There's like floats and like colors and like booze everywhere, and I'm
surprised you even remember it.
Straight, I barely do sometimes, so I gotta make it the table for two.
It's a religious experience for us, When you say you stumbling around, I still have a map in my head where I am. It's like, all right, go to my car.
Yeah, I've been like, I'm gonna go to my car, and then been like, dude, where is my car? That's Mardi Gras weekend. That's Table for Two, a New Orleans edition. I always enjoyed that one. Hope you do as well. We still got Mortal Kombat still to come. We're breaking out the Sega Genesis, firing up Sub-Zero, and I mean, what was it? Firing up Scorpion and Sub-Zero. Yeah, we're gonna do all that fun. But coming up next, some real good talk with New Orleans Advocate, award-winning reporter and columnist Rod Walker, coming up in the Sports Lounge. Stay tuned. Hey, we're in the Sports Lounge. Iso Joe, Hack and Hank, Josh the Juice on the ones and twos. Corey Rholdon, born in the Bayou, sitting in with us here in the Sports Lounge. I'm Jon Wiener. Let's go to the Bayou right now. Welcome in, great friend of the program, award-winning columnist and reporter with the New Orleans Advocate, Rod Walker. Rod, what's up, man? Thanks for coming in the lounge with us. How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me on. I'm always, whenever you call me, man, I'm always willing to do it. So
well, I appreciate it, man. Rod, you were such an influence on me growing up, reading your work in the Clarion Ledger. I don't want to make it sound like an old man, but it seems like decades ago at this point. But Rod, you're down in New Orleans, and interesting convergence here this week. We've got the NFL draft and the Zurich Classic also down in New Orleans, the PGA Tour event, and you were out there at the Zurich and with the Pro-Am event and got to talk to Sean Payton. Just kind of what was that whole scene out there like today?
Today was a celebrity shootout, and it's pretty interesting because you had Sean Payton and Ed Reed, who are, on the same team. Ed Reed, obviously, he's from the New Orleans area as well. I went to Deschamps High School here locally, and going to the Hall of Fame coming up this fall. So you had those two on one team, and on the other team you had Saints kicker Will Lutz and Chris Berman from ESPN. So it's pretty interesting to see those four guys up there playing golf, and Sean and Ed won pretty handily there. But it was a nice event. Just kind of starting off the Zurich Classic this week, which is just a busy week here in New Orleans. The Zurich always falls the same week as the NFL draft, so it's always a really hectic time here for sports reporters, especially trying to run back and forth from out there to the Saints training facility. So
Sean and Ed beat Chris and Will.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah,
I've seen Berman swing.
Yeah, I saw that. I was not pretty. Him and Charles Barkley are
right there together. Rod, when you look at the Saints, before we get to the draft, there was some interesting schedule news that came out, and how significant is it, the start of the schedule for the Saints, considering like what their track record is in terms of how they start the season?
Yeah, well, I mean, no secret that this team has really struggled coming out of the gate. They hadn't won a season opener. I think it was 2013 was the last time they won an opener. And they have a really tough stretch. They got 4 playoff teams straight out of the gate with the Texans, Rams. Well, Texans at home, and then you got 2 West Coast road trips to L.A. to play the Rams, and then the Seahawks the following week. Then you come back home and play the Cowboys team that really handed it to the Saints last regular season. Just talking to Sean Payton today, he sort of confirmed something that we had been hearing. But, when the Saints make that trip out to L.A. in week 2, they're just going to stay on the West Coast instead of flying back to New Orleans or flying back to Seattle. So they'll stay out there and, just get acclimated to the time zone and everything else out there. So that'll probably help this team some, just not having to make those, instead of making 4 trips across the country, they'll only make the trip once. So that bodes well for the team. But you look at that schedule early on, and this is a team that won't have Sheldon Rankins to start the season, a defensive tackle in the middle, and we don't know the status of David Onyemata because of he had an incident with marijuana back in February, so he may miss some games. So just looking at how tough that schedule is up front and the players that the Saints will be missing, I mean that could be tough. But the good thing about this schedule is they don't play those division opponents until later on in the season. They have a stretch where they play 4 division games in 18 days, and at the end of the day, I mean, if you win your division, you're in the playoffs. So I mean, they can start off 0-4 and take care of business in the division and be fine. So I mean, I think it's definitely a schedule this team can focus in the off season and be looking forward to these first 4 games out of the gate.
You were talking about Sheldon Rankins and the NFL draft's coming up this Thursday. What do you think the Saints will do? They only have 1 pick in the first 4 rounds of the NFL draft.
Yeah, I think the good thing about this team is they feel pretty good with what they've done in free agency. Obviously, Sheldon's not going to be there starting the season, but they went and got Malcolm Brown, who's with the Patriots. Been on these Super Bowl teams here recently, and they got Mario Edwards, who's gives them a little flexibility because Mario Edwards Jr. actually gives him some flexibility in that he can line up on the end or he can line up on the inside. But other than that, I mean, I don't think the team has any big holes to fill. They signed Jared Cook, tight end, from the Raiders, who was a Pro Bowler last year, and that sort of fills the void left by Ben Watson. They went and got Nick Easton to play center, filling in for the retired Max Unger. So I think they've done really well in free agency, and I think that'll help this team where they don't go into this draft, I don't think, just with any big needs. I think they just, at this point, you're just trying to get depth on the O-line and the defensive line and, maybe get you another receiver if you want to do that. But they don't go into this draft with any big needs, and that's a good thing considering the few picks they have this year.
Yeah. Rod Walker with the New Orleans Advocate, hanging out in the Sports Lounge. Let's get him on Twitter at @RWalkerAdvocate. And Rod, the Saints got here because of the whole track record and approach of aggressiveness going after players in free agency and in, obviously, the NFL draft. When you talk about Sean Payton and Mickey Loomis, you gave up a first round for Marcus Davenport a year ago. You gave up a 3rd round to get Teddy Bridgewater. They gave up a 4th round to bring in a backup corner this past season in Eli Apple. And we've seen time and time again the Saints trade up for guys that they want. And it's kind of left them in this position, Rod, where they don't have a lot of draft picks. But then on the other hand, they've had, I think, the team that they've wanted and a team that really could have won the Super Bowl, any of the past couple seasons. So do they feel like the approach is working? Like, do they like where they are? Or are they sort of saying, hey, man, the window's running out a little bit and we don't quite know what to do now?
No, I think they like where they are, but, I mean, what you can tell by the moves they made in free agency, but I think they feel like, they feel like they have a championship team. They feel like, they probably do need to win now. I think this team, they went out and re-signed Teddy Bridgewater, which, I mean, we don't know how many more years Breeze will keep going, but if this is the end of the road for Breeze, I mean, I feel like they have a good backup in Bridgewater who maybe can take over if this is Breeze's last year. And, the rest of those pieces around this team are fairly younger guys. I mean, Michael Thomas just finished his third year. Kamara just finished his second year. You got some young offensive linemen, guys like Ramczyk. So I think they've built a championship team, but I think they've also built a team that sort of looks toward the future a little bit. I mean, I think the big piece is just Drew Brees and how much longer he goes.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So you talked about Ben Watson a little bit. We saw earlier this week on Twitter that he might be contemplating coming back to NFL after his twins are born later this week. Do you think that the Saints will sign him?
Mickey Loomis, he was asked that question yesterday, and, he just said we'll have to see what happens. I sort of reached out to Ben, and I'm not really sure, what his thoughts is. I think it's just kind of one of those things where he's a guy who's played the game so long, and you sort of, when you play the game, it's kind of hard to let it go, but I'm not sure if he'll come back. I mean, it was just sort of, it's out there, and I'm not sure if it'll actually happen or not.
Rod, I know you're a big NBA guy, and I know the story in New Orleans this year with the NBA was Anthony Davis and when he wasn't playing and where ultimately he would go other than New Orleans. But as you look at the NBA playoffs going into the second round, I'm fired up for it. I think it's the best round, kind of like the NFL playoffs. The divisional round is the best weekend. The second round of the NBA playoffs is so much fun. What's the big story? Like, what are you most excited for in the NBA second round?
I think just both of those Eastern Conference semifinal. Well, I'm assuming the Sixers and
you can assuming
it's Philadelphia, Boston. Yeah, I'm just really curious to see which team will come out of that. I mean, I'd be afraid to bet on any of those teams. I mean, I'm just watching Milwaukee. I mean, they look, and that's a team that I don't think a lot of people really got a chance to see during the season. I mean, they're not on TV a whole lot, but that's a team that looks really, really good, and I'd just be interested in seeing if they can actually get through a conference that I think everybody thought when the season started, I think everybody thought it was Boston and Philadelphia's race, and now we have two more teams that all can win it, and obviously Golden State and Houston in the second round. I mean, how crazy is that going to be for them guys to meet in the second round instead of meeting in the Western Conference Finals? And I think it made a good thing for Houston. I mean, the earlier you play Golden State, the less chance that Chris Paul has gotten hurt by now. So I think that works out good for Houston. They may have Chris Paul around, and maybe they can finish him off this year after coming close last year.
It's a good thing for everybody, I think, that Houston and Golden State is a second-round matchup that we don't have to wait a couple more weeks. And, Rob, before we let you go, now we have a fun game here in the Sports Sounds that we play every week called Table for Two, and we made it an all-New Orleans edition this week, talking about the Saints and the drafts, and because Corey is a New Orleans guy, a Creole guy himself. So what we're going to give you real quick before we let you go, so you get 3 choices, and you can only pick 2. So there's only 2 seats at the table. We're going to give you 3 choices. New Orleans food, really simple. Shrimp, oysters, crawfish. Which 2 is at your table?
Crawfish.
Ooh.
Crawfish is out, or crawfish? Like, you get 2 of the 3. One of them can't.
Oh, I picked 2. Oh, okay.
Yeah, you get 2. It's a table for 2, man.
Oh, I got you. Crawfish and shrimp will be my 2.
Okay.
That one's pretty easy for me. Yeah.
You're not an oysters guy?
No, not really. I mean, I'll eat them, but that one was a little too easy for me.
Oh, well. Ooh, it was tough for us, man.
It was tough. I had to pick shrimp and oysters just because crawfish is so seasonal.
Rod, we thought we got more longevity out of the oysters. Crawfish like at their peak when they're right, you know what I mean? But I'm looking for a 12-year starter, you know what I mean?
Okay.
But no, that's good. No, you can't go wrong with crawfish ever. You can't go wrong with Rod Walker and the New Orleans Advocate. Get him on Twitter at @RWalkerAdvocate. Joining us in the Sports Sounds. Rod, we appreciate it. Enjoy the weekend in the NFL draft in New Orleans, the NBA playoffs kicking off. I know you'll have fun with that as well. And we'll talk to you again. We appreciate it.
All right, thanks, man.
Thanks a lot, man. Rod Walker in the Sports Lounge, again on Twitter, at @RWalkerAdvocate. And, I think, Corey, when you talk about, again, the Saints, like they feel good about where they are because this is, he differentiated. It's key. Like they built a team to win now around Drew Brees, but with the youth, with Kamara and Lattimore and Ramczyk and the offensive line, they also, I think, feel like Rankins and Davenport on the defensive side that they've built a team for the future a little bit. They'll have to find a quarterback.
Well, you also said they were one play away from being in the Super Bowl, and I feel like they went 13-3 last year. They have that team. They just got Jared Cook. The one need that they needed was a tight end who can go downfield and help Michael Thomas not get double teamed so much. So they have 3 weapons now on third down with Kamara, Thomas, and Jared Cook. So I feel like they are in a good position to win next year.
You know what they need is to cover somebody in the playoffs when it matters on the final play. Like, don't just not touch them and let them run to the end zone. Like, don't touch them late and let it be a pass interference. Just friggin' cover somebody at the end of the game. That's what they need to do. That's all they're missing, man, is actually covering somebody for one play at the end.
Can we get some luck, too? Just give me some luck.
I mean, like, I say that facetiously. Like, the Saints gagged it away twice. Yeah. Like, let's be perfectly real. But, like, for our narrative, you know what I mean? Like, we just need one play. Hey, speaking of play, I'm ready. I dressed in all black this week because, like, we need a W here. It's getting dire in game time. And I put out a game that, like, Corey doesn't even know, man. Like, it's before his time. So if I lose in this one, man, I may just have to, like, put up shot. We may have to bring Josh the Juice in here for the future. Mortal Kombat coming up in Game Time in the Sports Lounge.
You are in the Sports Lounge. Follow us online at Bash Brothers Media and share, like, and follow the show to enter to win a one-night stay for 2 at Waterview.
Anya, I can only get my guy here, man.
Oh man,
yeah, I can only get my guy.
Unbelievable.
I mean,
it's all right.
It's the quintessential Mortal Kombat move.
It's okay.
I'm going right to it. Oh yeah. My man Scorpio is just whoa, chill, Sonya. Not supposed to go down like that. Oh yeah. Just a drop kick right to the face on the ground.
This is cheating with that little rope thing.
What rope thing? What rope thing?
Some illegal activity going on.
This rope thing? Oh, you figured it out. You can duck, you know. Here comes the rope thing. I can go down and do it.
Come on, get him. There you go.
How
go.
Cyber uppercut thing. Oh, whoa. Found a new trick move. Whoa.
Let's go. Oh, we're not going down without a fight here.
Best of 3. Sonya just worked me. Just a couple of quick hands to the face. All right, this is where the magic happens. I fell in love with the curveball. What was that? Nah, man.
Let's go. Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show, too.
Take that somewhere else.
Let's go. Just like the Ben Simmons shot, it misses.
That's unbelievable. This dude doesn't even play Mortal Kombat, man. He never even played it in his life. Another L. I don't want to play no more.
The Sports Lounge is brought to you by the Sportsbook at Waterview Casino in Vicksburg, giving you the edge in sports betting.
I don't know. He never played Mortal Kombat. I had Scorpion. He had Sonya of all people, and I just got hammered, man.
Well, you know, it was a great comeback on yourself.
Yeah.
You know, you had the 1-0 lead, and you almost defeated me.
I was close. I was right there on the brink and just gagged it away like Marcus Williams in coverage 2 years ago.
Oh, gee.
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing it up.
We got an official score, Iso Joe.
Yeah, Corey, 2-1 in a best-of-3 series in Mortal Kombat. This is the second week in a row that you've lost to somebody who had never played the game that you chose.
Dude, I was making notes. I've lost in Papa Shot, Skee Ball, Jenga, Crossfire, Mortal Kombat, and like my NBA Jam win was like suspect at best, man. Team Ray, Team McKenzie, Team Corey. It's like, just throw anybody in there, man. I need like a zombie next to me and like a golf game or something, and like maybe I'll have a shot. I don't know, man.
Well, I'll tell you something that you are better at. That's put your money where your mouth is. So
that's what I'm talking about.
Let's take a look at last week's picks.
Never walk away from a heater.
Dude, 8.5, I'm taking it. I feel like the Warriors are easily going to cover that. Easily going to cover that because they got so much to prove.
I think the Philadelphia 76ers is going to go on the road and prove that they are not just better than Brooklyn, but in that different league as like championship contender and like, solid playoff team. 5-0, different story, and put your money where your mouth is. But really, Corey, when you look at both of those picks real quick last week, I mean, the Sixers coming off of a loss, and all of a sudden we're like, hey, what's up with the Sixers? Brooklyn's good, no shot. And Ray, sort of the same thing on the other side. It's like the Clippers, they just kind of woke Golden State up a little bit. And you heard Ray, it was like he didn't care. I said 9 points is a big number. It didn't matter what the numbers were. The Warriors were woke.
Yeah, and the Warriors are going to show everybody that they were going to absolutely dominate the rest of the series, that the Clippers didn't have a shot at any of these games.
And so we moved to this week's picks, and Corey, you and I like both got excited about the opportunity to pick a golf tournament, the Zurich Classic. Like, why not? You know what I mean? Down in New Orleans. So I'll let you tee it up first here. You've got a Zurich Classic winners pick for us.
So I was looking at the teams, and I really like the team of Jason Day and Adam Scott. I feel like that's a strong team.
Yeah,
and they
I'll
should
say.
win. Yeah, they're a real strong team.
And I think Jason Day and Adam Scott are the favorites at 8-1, I believe, coming in. I'm going to knock down from the favorites, but stay pretty close to the top. And I'm going to go with Team Patrick. Patrick Cantley and Patrick Reed at 12-1. Now, we know Patrick Reed and his experience in match play. Patrick Cantley, big shout out to the gent over on Play It Where It Lies, called his move in the Masters, and Corey, Patrick Cantley was leading the Masters in the back nine on Sunday and has really risen to one of the best players in the world. I think Cantley's got like a top 20 ranking now, and I think with Patrick Reed and kind of his ability in that scenario, I look at Team Patrick at 12-1. Now, you can go way deep in golf, and it's hard to, you're really, it's a fool's errand, kind of picking a needle out of the haystack a little bit, but at least when they cut it to 60 teams, you got 1 out of 60 instead of 120. But I feel good on putting the streak on Team Patrick.
All right, I like my choice with Jason Day.
You should. Adam Scott and Jason Day.
Studs.
Yeah, absolute studs. Well, speaking of studs, want to say a big thanks to you, Corey Rholdon, for coming in the Sports Lounge, man.
Dude, it was fun. I hope I can join y'all some other time. I'm excited to work for you. Absolutely.
Well, we're certainly glad to have you here. We do miss my partner in crime, Ray Coleman, and Ray will be back with us next week, joining Iso Joe on the Iso Cam, Hack and Hank, our director, Josh the Juice on the ones and twos. Big shout out to Waterview Sportsbook and Casino. Of course, our show hosted and powered by Waterview Sportsbook and Casino over in Vicksburg. And big thanks to our guy Rod Walker with the New Orleans Advocate. Great friend of the program, one of the big influences of mine growing up, and really one of the best guys doing it right now in the Southeast, especially down there in New Orleans, Rod Walker. So thanks to him for joining us as well. Make sure you share the show, like the show, follow us, send it everywhere. We want to get the word out and bring everybody, Corey, into the lounge, man, because we really, we have a good time in here talking ball and spending time with each other.
Yeah, it's a fun show. I really like the table for two.
Yeah.
It brings a unique taste every single week. And this week, I was excited to see there's a New Orleans flavor to it.
Speaking of flavor, I'm with you, man. Like, we like crawfish and everything, but like we need to get some mileage out of this.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
You know, the oysters brings it to the table.
Well, look, I'm ready for it all right now. We can make a table for 3 or 4. Like, we can throw some, throw some prawns in here, scallops, like whatever. I'm ready to go.
Scallops sounds good.
Yeah, scallops does sound good. Well, what sounds good is the Sports Lounge every week online, direct to you. Make sure you join us next week for more on the Sports Lounge. From my guy Corey Rholdon, Iso Joe, Hack and Hank, Josh the Juice Clegg. Again, big thanks to Rod Walker. I'm Jon Wiener. This is the Sports Lounge.